Welcome to Mo's Market Pulse. I'm your host, Sarah Mokram, founder of Mo Digital Solutions, where we help businesses hit their revenue goals and thrive. On this podcast, we talk with industry leaders to gain real insights. And today we're joined by a founder building in one of the most complex and operationally heavy industries, healthcare, with a focus on using AI to streamline administrative workflows. Jofin Joseph, founder and CEO of Needletail AI, welcome and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Sarah, and thanks for having me.
Of
It's a pleasure
course.
to be here.
So to start, can you just give us a bit of context around Needletail AI? What are you building today and where you're focused within the healthcare space?
Absolutely. So, Needletail AI, we are building automated RCM. It's revenue cycle management in healthcare. This is one of the most complex and resource intensive, operational intensive processes in healthcare. And this is all about how healthcare providers interact with insurance companies to get paid. And this is traditionally a operationally heavy, documentation heavy, people intensive process. And with generative AI, we are automating it completely. So that's what Needletail AI does. So we reduce the complexities of the process, we reduce the intensiveness of the process, and we reduce the time it takes and the complexity it takes. So that's what we do.
That's great. And when you look at where you've chosen, specifically in dental, what makes that segment, particularly compelling from both a problem and opportunity perspective? Is it more administrative heavy or more manual than, say, other areas of healthcare? Or what really drew you to that opportunity in that space?
Absolutely. Great question. So we started in dental, and that's where we are at the moment. So there are opportunity reasons to it, and there is like a process reason to it. So purely talking from a process standpoint, dental industry and technology readiness in the dental industry is probably a few years behind the general medical space, primarily because of the maturity of systems and the where the whole ecosystem is in terms of technology. So it's still a far behind. So we definitely see a larger opportunity to bridge the gap in dental. So that's one reason. Now, second, from an opportunity standpoint and purely talking from a GTM standpoint here, so as a startup, to get in and sell to an ideal size that we can sell to, dental, we found out to be a sweet spot because we have those companies which are still maybe 10 locations, 20 locations dental practices, which we can consider in the SME bucket or SMB bucket or mid-market bucket, which as a startup we can get to and sell. And even there is considerable size. So dental is a sweet spot there. And again, when it comes to GTM, I have personally found in my 50 plus discovery conversations before starting this, I personally always found dental leaders and mostly dentists owning a single location or a few location clinics to be way more business savvy and open to ideas and open to improvement in their processes, etc., compared to other spaces. So I found a sweet spot here, and in the traditional angle of finding the right place which you can sell to and which has got some early adopters for your product, and that's an opportunity space here, and that's how we chose dental.
Great. That makes sense. Of course, you want someone who's a little behind, right? So then you're offering some solution, but you don't want them to be so resistant to change that it's even
Yeah,
hard to break
yeah,
through.
yeah, absolutely.
And as you've been building over the past several months, how has your understanding of the problem evolved now that you're actively working with customers and inside these actual workflows?
Right. So probably there's two sides to it. One is the problem itself, and second, since we're talking about GTM here, the GTM aspect of it as well. So the problem itself honestly hasn't changed much because my early understanding has been like centered around a bunch of conversations that I've made. As I said, like 50 plus conversations with dentists or dental office owners and DSO owners, etc., which I made during the discovery phase, which formed the fundamental understanding about the process. That hasn't changed much, and we are seeing different variations of slight variations of the exact same problem. Because as a problem and as a process, this has existed over a very long period of time. And people have always been doing it. And it's a very critical process for everyone, right? Because they have to get paid. So it's very critical. And one way or the other, everyone has been doing it. And pretty much there are standard ways to get it done with human teams, whether internal or outsourced. So it's a pretty well established problem statement and a area. Now, the only place where it differs a bit is in how they're doing it currently and how much of pain they face when it comes to how they're doing it currently. So one thing that we found out, we really double down on our micro ICP, as I call it. So ICPs are there, but for a startup, even better is those micro ICPs, where you try to distill it down to the smallest set possible, which you can actually focus and sell to from purely from a GTM standpoint. So what we identified was the identification or the feeling of pain is very low when it is a single location practice or a two location practice, because this is being done by an internal person, mostly a front office staff. That you anyways need that front office staff to be there, or a couple of front office staff to be there, and they're doing the process. So the doctor who's the owner might not really feel that problem a lot. But the moment it gets to like 3 locations or 4 locations, that's when people try to consolidate this together into a single back office operation. Efficiency issues start hitting or start revealing itself. So we decided that 3+ locations is the sweet spot. Now, again, on the higher side, once it is like 15+ locations or 20+ locations, everyone try to bring in more standard processes and things start getting a little bit enterprisey. So we figured, okay, probably that's 20+ locations is for a later point of time. Initially, we decided that 3 to 15 locations would be our sweet spot. So that's our micro ICP, right? So dental offices in the US selling and having 3 to 15 locations, and that gave us immense capability to really double down on our ICP. And beyond that, we figured out that the whatever solution we build needs to be working seamlessly with their existing systems, mostly a practice management system that they use. And because the biggest challenge, more than probably building AI itself, is to actually roll out to maybe 10 locations and maybe 30 front office staff. And we did not want to like train them on a new system or a new software, etc. We really wanted to be invisible by design and just seamlessly integrate into their own systems, whatever they use currently. So that brought us the second layer of filter in terms of finding out our micro ICP. So we integrated with a couple of practice management systems initially and just sold to those customers of those practice management systems in that size that we mentioned, right? So that helped us distill down further and bring it down to maybe 200 companies, 200 to 250 companies in the US that we can really double down on as a first goal, right? So then that's where we start. So that was big learning, right? So that, and which actually helped our GTM efforts to be way more focused and targeted. And that helped us immensely in the early days.
That is so smart to think about that implementation piece, because you can build this amazing product and you can solve the issues that they're facing and have this great solution. But if it's so hard to integrate or implement into the processes, there's going to be so much resistance there. And so that was really smart. And I love that you guys thought about all of those different aspects. And that actually shifts well to my next question here around growth and getting those first few customers. It sounds like you guys were able to really narrow down where here's this 200 list of potential customers, and they would fit this, software and all of that and fit into the size that you want. And then what did you guys do? Now that you had the list, how did you get those first few customer relationships to actually come together?
Right, right. So it's interesting that I've personally been in the GTM space for quite a long time. I actually built a software or in my previous company, which we sold. I built a software for marketing and sales teams. So pretty well aware of the space and selling software. But one of my earliest realization was every lesson that I learned in my past and every tactic of GTM tactic that I knew, I quickly saw them failing in the healthcare industry. So it was funny because, yeah, I was trying out everything I knew, cold emails and LinkedIn outreaches and everything, some cold calls and everything. And none of them were working in the early days. So funny enough, what worked for me in the early days was Facebook. So, so literally I went to Facebook and found a bunch of friends who potentially could be connected with people, all friends, right? So my college buddies, my school buddies, my relatives, a bunch of those people in Facebook, right? So no professional connections. I reached out to them and asked, hey, who's your dentist? Right. So, and if you would be able to give me an introduction, right? And at that point of time, I was not looking at ICP to be very clear, right? So I was just looking to talk to as many people as possible. And then someone would connect me with a friend of theirs, with their dentist, or this dentist who comes to the same horse riding class as their child goes, etc. Right? So a neighbor, etc. All social connections, everything social connections, right? So and then I made a multi-city trip to people whom I spoke to over a phone call, tried to meet them. So I spoke to 50 plus people. I met in person around 10 to 12 people to gain this whole knowledge. So the first set of outreach and first set of contacts that I made was purely through social connections. Now, I wouldn't say that probably 90% of them were not falling in my ICP, which I eventually figured out, right? But there were a few, right? So there was one of those conversations actually converted to a customer as one of the first customers. And then I also learned that this industry gives a lot of value to the relationships being built, right? And that is heavily relationship driven. The buying process in this industry is also referral and relationship driven. So our next few customers also have been like, my whole idea has been to build and relationships in the industry and mostly not even looking at a sale to start with, right? So, and that's the paths that we took next to get a few more customers, all relationship driven. And none of these customers were directly an affiliated person or a new known person. None. I did not have any contacts in the dental industry before I jumped into this, right? Zero contacts. So, but what eventually happened is through these second degree, third degree connections, I built up a bunch of those connections over 3 to 4 months period, and that actually converted to our early customers. Now, though, we have moved into multiple experiments, right? So we did not want to leave outbound and LinkedIn and everything aside just because we tried initially and failed. So there were a lot of learnings, and now we run a full-fledged outbound campaign. We run a LinkedIn campaign, but mostly focusing on professionals in the space who could be connectors. So we try to build relationships with these professionals through LinkedIn and not try to go in with a direct pitch to them to sell. We have a big success in our inbound because going by the theme of providing value and building up trust in the industry, we invested heavily into creating useful stuff, starting from small reference materials to a lot of interesting stuff in our website. Our website is probably has like 5,000 plus pages of different stuff, which are all very, very useful, not even focusing on selling. So we went beyond blogs. So we leveraged AI to build small tools, we built a lot of guides, a lot of printables, a lot of those reference material, which typically office managers use or office staff use in a dental office. And that has started giving us a lot of inbound. So fundamentally, we have kept to the theme of giving value and building trust and relationships, primarily in our GTM, right? And very rarely do we go with a direct pitch to a person who is like completely unknown and try to sell, because we have found out the hard way that that doesn't work in the market. This market demands trust to be built. And, for trust to be built, we have to be genuinely trying to help. And that's fundamentally the the theme of our GTM.
That's great. That's an amazing plan. And thank you for outlining from the beginning to where you guys are today. It looks like you have evolved and still, of course, everything's based on relationships, which you learned from the very beginning, but it sounds like it's working well for you guys. So, one thing that often comes up in a more relationship driven market is speed and how difficult it can be to move deals forward. How does that show up for you guys right now? And, have you figured out anything that has helped in moving it a little quicker for you?
Yeah. So I think if if an introduction happens at the right time from the right person, things move really fast. But at the same time, healthcare, many other industries, deal movement is always slower. Generally, you have a conversation, you have a bunch of demos, you have like step by step. Going through that process is always like challenging. So we have like multiple small micro improvements that we have made through the whole buying process as such to make it speed up a bit. I'd admit I'm not probably at the ideal stage where I wanted to be. Uh, Coming from a lot of like try a free trial and start using, put a credit card and using kind of a world in my previous startups, this is very different, right? So there's always needs to be a demo, multiple conversations, a free trial period, etc. So I can probably tell you one of the changes that we made, which made some significant impact. So we had this test process, which is pretty standard in the industry, where you provide a test of your capabilities to your customers so that they can identify, they can evaluate, and then decide. So what we did, so we were doing that, and we figured out that there's a lot of friction and a lot of delay in that test process because a customer has to take their time out of their busy schedules, which is treating patients, which is important, to actually send you a test data set, sign an NDA and a PA with you, the HIPAA compliance piece with you, share data in the most compliant and safe way, wait for your results. Once the results are in, they have to do a comparison, etc. Right? And now we're talking about people who are not in front of their computers also there, right? So we are actually asking them to actually take time out and do all those work. And that's too much to ask. And that's the first thing that we learned. Now, how we changed it is after a few trials and seeing that these test was getting delayed by weeks and sometimes months in the process, not in actually doing the test, but just to get the rest of the pieces ready and aligned for the test. So we decided to just change it, and we decided to just give a free implementation and a free 1 month of usage for them so that they get into a contract directly, and we provide them with a pricing right at the beginning, and just go into the pricing conversation directly and offer them a risk-free implementation and first 1 month of free usage where their involvement is very minimal, right? So we promise them it'll be less than an hour that they have to spend in total throughout the 1.5 months of implementation and test. So because once we have a contract, they sign the contract, and this contract covers all the legal aspects of HIPAA and everything. And they can actually share us access to their practice management systems because we already have a contract. We integrate. We take care of all the data extraction and everything. And we also enable them to actually run this process parallel to whatever their existing system is, so that they see right there in their systems the difference between what their current process does and what we do, right? Both in terms of speed, in terms of quality, and everything, right? And we built dashboards around to actually show the difference so that they don't have to do all the work on their side to actually see that. And we give risk-free after 1 month. You can say no, and then that's it, right? Now, the risk on our side is we spend considerable amount of time to implement. Confidence on our side is almost always once they see the full demo right inside their PMS, connected to their PMS and do the implementation, we are very confident that they see the difference of the product. So yeah, it's partially the trust that we have on our own product that we developed over time. But this change actually actually made the speed to implement very, very much. And now we are way faster. So we are probably like 30 to 40% faster than early days. So this is one change, right? And there are smaller and bigger changes here and there, other changes that we made, but then it's all very tactical, right? So, and this is something which I believe there's no playbook existing. You just need to touch and feel the whole process, and be ready to actually change accordingly. And that's the only way in which you can achieve it. Yeah.
That is such a smart idea. I love that you guys did that because it does seem like it's a process or a solution that to really see the value would be to use it, which then makes
Hmm.
sense why to give a free trial or free demo. But that friction there of having to provide all that information to you guys would just significantly delay.
Yeah.
So that was very smart. I love that. So when you step back and look at the business today, where do you feel the most friction in terms of actually accelerating growth? I know that you guys have now implemented a lot of these different changes that have helped once you get those conversations, but is there anything that you feel, is still something that's a constraint or a roadblock to helping you guys really accelerate?
Yeah. So I wouldn't say roadblocks because they're not like blocking, but definitely there are like those tough roads to go through, which slows us down definitely. So top of the funnel is always a problem because generally generally conversations that start. I mean, it's a small segment of customers that we're after, right? So we're not as narrow as where we started, but we're still narrow. We deliberately keep it narrow because dental is a very fragmented market, and the moment you go very generic, you can get lost in that noise. So we always keep it very narrow. But still in that group, there's always a timing factor to it because they already have a system, they already have a contract, they already have a contract with an outsourcing company who's doing this for them in a manual way. So they might have a 1 year contract, so there's a time of expiry of the contract, etc. So there's always that top of the funnel problem where the right timing has to be there. And unlike many other industries where these timings are much more standardized to budget cycles and everything, to the segments that we are and size that we're selling to, it's not very standard. So the only thing that you can do is to keep building relationships and wait for the right timing. So that factor is there. Now we could do it way better, and we're trying to do it way better as well. So we could actually improve top of the funnel really, really well. Now, second is the pace at which we get into implementing. So right now we take on average 15 days. We're trying to bring it down to 3 to 4 days in the near future with a lot of automations and a lot of like standardizations in the process. 15 days is great in the industry, but then we don't want to be satisfied with that because if we do that faster and eventually to a software magic world where you can just sign up and use at some point of time, it would be amazing. So, we want to bring down that implementation period from 15 days to 3 days is a big goal for us as well. We believe that will significantly improve our win rates in GTM. Yeah, so those are two important areas. So, and branding in healthcare, branding is extremely important. And talking very specifically about dental as well. So the brand that you build for your company is going to be very critical. So we want to invest more into branding and do more of that stuff right now. All we are doing is like creating amazingly useful stuff and giving a lot of that thing for free to our users so that they have our brand connected to value. So that's all we are doing. So we're not doing big stuff like big sponsorships and big booths at conferences and things like that, which eventually we will have to do once we are a little down the road. But yeah, so branding, we want to be investing in that way more than where we are. Branding, top of the funnel, and the mid funnel implementation piece are the three major things.
And so going along these lines of looking ahead, so looking ahead to the next 6, 12 months, what are the biggest growth priorities for you and your team?
Yeah. So two things. One is definitely getting to larger DSOs. So we are expecting in the next 3 months we'll be ready to get into larger DSOs, which are, by larger DSOs I mean like 35 plus locations, and there are DSOs with like 100 plus locations, etc. So that's one thing which we want to be getting into. Second is to expand our capabilities. So right now we are only doing one piece of the whole RCM cycle. So right now we do eligibility or benefits verification alone, and there is like three more steps or 3 or 4 more steps in the full RCM cycle, where the complete utility of this product and magic of AI in this whole process will come when the whole thing is automated, right? And my vision for us is that our CM, which is a heavily manual process at the moment, which involves people, processes, and a lot of complexities, is going to simplify itself into an API call, a simple API call that you get results on back, right? So where a whole agentic system would do all the activities in the middle and just get you paid, right? So, and that's the future that we are looking forward to. In the next 6 months, we are launching the rest of the pieces as well. And that's the second big piece that I'm looking for. So that's going to be our big inflection point, where we can simplify to a level where the whole cycle becomes just an API call, and that's it.
That's exciting. That does seem like a big moment in your guys' company and what you guys can offer. And so, for those who want to keep up with you and learn more about your work and company, where's the best place to connect or follow along?
LinkedIn would be great. I'm Jofin Joseph, and it's a very rare name, so wouldn't be hard to find. And Needletail is the name of the company. So Needletail is the name of bird, by the way. It's one of the fastest uh, birds in the world. So it apparently flies more than 100 miles per hour in speed. So we named our company from the bird, because we stand for speed, right? So our fundamental business is to make a otherwise slow and mundane process fast, right? So blazing fast. So that's what we stand for. And Jofin Joseph and Needletail would be a combination which is hard to miss on LinkedIn. So I'd love to, yeah. So LinkedIn would be a great place. I'd love to be like sharing my thoughts or on GTM and what I learned in healthcare GTM, or even in the previous world of doing GTM to other tech companies. So more than happy to share my knowledge. I know the audience of this pod would be mostly GTM enthusiasts who are looking at learning and looking at making their GTM journeys better. So happy to share notes, happy to learn and share my knowledge anytime. So yeah, LinkedIn is the best place.
Well, thank you everyone for tuning into Mo's Market Pulse. And thank you again for joining us today. And I'll be sure to link all of your LinkedIn and company page so people can connect with you.
Absolutely. Thanks a lot.